So the next presentation is from Legrand, who is an anthropologist engaged in creative research approaches, and her work focuses on social practices that redefine the inclusion of human bodies in the cycles and rhythms of the living in a post-industrial context. Since 2018, she's been a researcher and facilitator in the OCAPI program, which is the Water Environment Urban Systems Laboratory in France.
Hello to all of you. I'm sorry I can't be with you to chat, but please feel free to contact me after this summit. It will be a pleasure. First, I will say a few words to introduce myself. I'm an environmental anthropologist engaged in a research creation process. I'm interested in ecological urban planning practices, that's to say the increasing consideration of ecosystems, living beings, and the great cycles of nature, such as water, soil, nutrients, in urban planning practices. How do they redefine knowledge, imaginaries, and ways of living? For the past 2 years, I've been working within the Action Research Program OCAPI, which focuses on the ecological transition of urban sanitation. I work in an interdisciplinary team at the École des Ponts, an engineering school located in Paris, in France. Today, I would like to talk to you about the images and texts, the iconography produced for the promotion of ecological sanitation in France, and more specifically, the dry management of human urine and feces for their agricultural valorization. With the development of ecological sanitation, imaginaries associated with human excreta are gradually changing. As a diversity of actors re-emphasize the role of urine and feces as a source of fertility, new representation emerge: posters, cartoons, slogan, gimmick, icons, advertisements. And the message I wish to convey today is that beyond the ecological issue, which is consensual, these messages convey contradictory motivations. On the one hand, caring for the earth, the quest for autonomy, the fight against mining and agricultural extractivism. On the other hand, the promise of marketing a new, infinitely renewable resource. Thus, a tension appears among us between body reclaiming and commodification of human resources. As a participant myself in the production of these images, I often ask myself these questions. What goal are we pursuing? Where is the line between advertisements and awareness raising, propaganda, poetry? How can the renewal of imaginaries of pee and poo help us to build a truly sustainable sanitation system? First dimension of the problem is talking about pee and poo. To talk about ecological sanitation, we need to talk about shit and urine. And adults clearly have a problem with that. In France, however, our humor is rather scatological, as well as a register of our swearing. And from a distance, one could have the impression that we talk about it all the time. Merde, fais chier, crotte, que des emmerdes. Reciprocally, French culture is strongly marked by the history of the hygienist movement. Bleach, soda, pesticides, the relationship with living things, particularly microbes, is an armed struggle, a desperate search for control. And the health administration, for example, is powerful in France. Sanitary administration. Excrement have become all the more difficult to evoke because, and it's common sense now, they're never again in front of our eyes because the flushing of the toilet allows them to disappear. And thus, there is no need to talk about it. Once swallowed by the sewer, it no longer exists. The only poop that we can still talk about is the one of newborns, the sweet golden poop of milk-fed babies. Urine does not carry the same stigma, the same obscure part, but it's still a dirty thing and a difficult word to pronounce in a glass-walled office between white-collar workers dressed in clean suits. In the glass doors of business centers, it doesn't really stick. We can't talk about that yet. Not only because it's dirty, but also because it's subversive. Shit has or had a power of contestation, and it is in a way a witch's substance. It has been. Therefore, it's political. Second dimension of our problem is talking about shit still political. To talk openly about shit and its value, beyond basic provocation, it's an act of rebellion, has been in the sense of an act that in itself allows the vice of extractivist capitalism to be undone. It carries the potential of taking a collective responsibility for water, soil, and land fertility. For some proponents of ecological sanitation, the most radical ones, it's still indeed the case. Here is the watchword: we will no longer give our poop to industrialists, because it belongs to us, and it belongs to us to make something good out of it. These actors are reclaiming their body fluids. And reclaiming means here to make ourselves responsible, to take back a hold on our own shit. And for that, it's necessary to represent it. It leads to start a game of judo with disgust, reversal of the imaginary. Ecological sanitation is not a pure technical question. It's also a question of becoming aware, of regaining knowledge of this matter that flows from us every day. In order to make the subject sensitive and therefore understandable, it's necessary to thwart the traps of the black screens of thought. According to this viewpoint, what is disgusting is not shit itself. It's the conventional centralized sanitation system, the management of the small water cycle, and more broadly, the infrastructures of thermo-industrial capitalism. This ogre that transforms mountains, rivers, soils into money on the one hand and garbage dumps on the other. It's the human body itself assimilated to an insatiable monster that participates, plugged into the sewer, in this enterprise of destruction based on the count of added value. This monster that literally shits money. Here are images of disordered, off-center flow and an environment incapable of absorbing our share of death and bringing it back to life. The source is dried up because it's polluted. So the watchword is stop shitting in drinking water. That literally means you don't shit in your own bottle, in the water you're going to drink the next moment. And the flush becomes the symbol of this disorder on a larger scale, the expanding human body represented on the scale of the water cycle and the entire organic matter that does not relieve itself where it should. Putting things back in order then consists in giving back what has been borrowed to the soil, to cultivated land, to the earth beneath, to reconstitute the broken cyclicity to allow life to start again. Managing excreta by dry means forces us to look them in the face. Faced with flushing, dry toilets appear as those devices that allow plants to grow, assimilated to a watering can or flower pot, in images that make us understand by analogy that excreta contain fertilizing resources. The production of urine and feces can therefore be assimilated to a gardening gesture, an action turned toward life. So, third dimension of our problem now. In the world of circular economy, can I sell my shit? Saying that we want to turn waste into a resource leaves the political question open. How can we keep the subversive scope of the experimental sphere when it's a question of undoing their stigma? We are at the moment trying to answer the following question. How can we move the stigma to the sewer, which could well become the new source of disgust? This question may be answered in years to come. And then, as soon as shit becomes consensual, nice, as soon as it becomes possible and easy to talk about it, even in class hours, what political significance will retain this gesture of removing shit from the sewer? It's a question of time, and it's a question now of making a common front in the fight for the return of shit to life. But what are we exactly fighting for? In the current promotion of ecological sanitation, we discover the convocation of a diverse political vocabulary drawing from the historical repertoire of mobilization and commitment. This ranges from international labor movements to the call for mobilization in the military. What does all this tell us? Is there something there more than a gimmick? What aesthetic potential does it offer for the struggle against extractivism? In the drive to promote the circular economy of nutrients in which we as researchers are participating, we too are trying to encourage every inhabitant to donate the product of his or her digestion. Make ourselves useful. The usefulness of the gesture is emphasized. The collective dimension, the fact of participating in a common cause, is emphasized. But something is missing. To whom is it question of being useful? Circular economy, when applied to the extramental sphere, conjures up the vocabulary of mining. This may seem paradoxical. It's a return of extractivism through the back door. Indeed, as soon as it's applied to so-called renewable resources, those derived from living organisms, extractivism can very well be applied to human bodies themselves via the waste they produce. According to this prism, urine and fecal matter represent a gold mine, a deposit that should be exploited and valorized in the sense of bringing them back into the sphere of added value production. If the dejections are acknowledged as a resource, with whom should they be shared? How do you want to share the product of your digestion? The capacity of forests to take out carbon from the atmosphere is on the market now. The financial system has absorbed the photosynthetic capacity of plants to swallow the residues from planes and coal-fired power stations. But will human digestion itself also be subject to the same logic? Then we will really be able to say that cities are human stables, as a French agronomist proclaimed it in the 19th century, which was the golden age of human fertilizers. Here are a few more questions to finish. Should anyone sell this fertile substance that comes from the human body? Is it legitimate for anyone to make profit on it? What are we trying to reproduce here? Money or the substance of? Thank you very much for your attention. And again, feel free to contact me. I will be really, really happy to share more with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.